Good evening, everybody. This is Casper from the Tropical Weather Threat Society, bringing you our nightly update regarding the tropical basins. And we've definitely got some new information and some good news to report tonight, folks. It's rare that we get good news on a September 5th in any hurricane season to report. But without further ado, Invest 91L as of the 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time outlook has reduced its development percentages. We are now at 40% over the next 48 hours and a 70% chance over the next 7 days. This is a reduction from this morning, which had a 60% chance of development over the next 48 hours and a 90% chance of development over the next 7 days. Now, if you notice, it is still red. We happen to have, hold on just 1 second, folks. Sorry about that, folks. I was expecting that telephone call to be earlier than what it had been. Would you please go tell your mother that? And of course, it happened to call right in the middle of beginning the live stream. So I do apologize. So, anyway, we have had a reduction in our development percentages. And although we're still in the red, so we still have formation likely, although the models are not really too gung ho on this anymore. It still remains a potential threat. Still deserves respect because we are in the beginning of September. So it is just keep an eye on it. Nothing to be too overly concerned about, especially the folks here in the U.S. Way out into the future if it were to potentially threaten the U.S. in any way, shape, or form. Right now, our biggest folks are for the folks here in our biggest concern is for the folks down here into the islands. So, for everybody here into the Lesser Antilles, getting into the windwards, leewards, potentially even the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola area. Just keep an eye on this. It's not even a guarantee that it's going to develop, but hey, just, monitor it. That's all we ask. We still have moving across the central tropical Atlantic at about 10 miles an hour. I've been keeping a very close watch on the forward speed because we have seen this western edge of our hatched area cover the islands a couple different times, and here this afternoon we're not into the island chain again. We just barely got Barbados in there, but none of the others. So it's very concerning. No question about it that we keep getting it slower and slower, although it is just buying us more time to monitor this system. If we look at some of the particulars here with cyclonic WX, there is one thing that I would like to show, and that is the lack of convection that we've seen throughout the day today. So I'm going to run this, and you'll note that the lower level clouds kind of show up in the daylight as yellow, and then at the nighttime they're shaded back into the background. There is some spin with this. There is a circulation, albeit broad and a little elongated, but there is definitely some circulation nonetheless. The big problem is that it has no convection. And it hasn't had hardly any convection all day long. Now that the sun is going down, I expect to see the reinitiation of convective activity through the overnight hours, and we'll watch it again in the morning after the sun comes up. We may see another reduction in convection as we go throughout the day tomorrow. I have here the simulated halves radar. This is the 12Z run here. And if I run this forward, I'm really more or less not necessarily looking for organization as much as I am the convection. And we really don't have a lot of organization in the convective activity, as you could see. We certainly have a denoted area of spin, but at that point, it's just a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity, which could lead to flash flooding here in parts of the Lesser Antilles, Windwards, and Leeward Islands, regardless whether this thing develops or not. So, should be treated with respect and monitored throughout its continued progress across the tropical Atlantic. If we compare the A model with the halves B model, the halves B maybe a little bit more convective activity there in the beginning, but as you can see, the pressures remain high, and it really does not have any cohesion to it whatsoever. As I continue to run this forward and we get closer and closer to the islands, it's starting to try to drop a little bit of the pressures, but then they immediately rebound again. And it's just more or less a cluster of shower and thunderstorm activity. And these are from, both solutions from the halves. If we look at this afternoon's European run, this morning was crazy. Yesterday when we were looking at it, we were like, oh wow, like we could see some development. And then the overnight hours, when they finally got the area of invest designated to it, the signals just basically fell off the cliff. And we do have the potential still for development, and we could see a tropical depression and a name system perhaps. But the models have really backed off on this over the last two runs, especially with the Euro. If we are the 6Z only goes out 6 days. But as we can see here with the brand new 12Z or the most recent 12Z, we don't have anything compared to what we had yesterday. That is a massive change and reduction in their overall development probabilities. Now, one thing that I do want to point out, if I get it out here to day 12, and this is a little bit in the long range, I'm getting a little bit of a signal right here. I have seen potential CAG in this region, and it looks like in some of the models it drifts off this way, so we're gonna have to watch the Western Gulf of Mexico, not this upcoming week, but maybe for the following week, maybe getting into like late this upcoming week, maybe the weekend, late weekend, early next week. We'll just have to keep an eye on it, because I do see signals of a Central American gyre potentially developing. Now, if we compare the Euro legacy with the Euro AI has basically abandoned Invest 91L. Yes, there is another robust wave coming off of the African mainland, but I would like to point out that the ensembles and the models have been calling for robust development of many waves coming off of the African mainland, and then after they get out over open waters, they fail to produce and fail to materialize. So I would take this with a grain of salt until we get it out over open waters, and then of course it's right around peak season. We may have something else to watch. But now, if I pop it to day 12, again, very few signals, but just a little something out here, and I'll show you guys why here momentarily. If we compare this with the GEFS, now the GEFS, as far as Invest 91L goes, you don't have much at all. Again, most models are backing off of developing Invest 91L. Although, if we look at the satellite, we see that it does have an area of rotation that just deserves our respect until we can be 100% certain that it is not going to develop. That area of circulation and the overall lack of convection is, if it starts firing convection, those development percentages may go back up. Right now we're at 40 and 70, not 0 and 0. So we still have to keep a watch on it. But if we look here with the GEFS, we do have two little areas, three little spots to where we may have to watch. Just getting into that time of season, and as you can see, when we go from day 10 to day 12, there's a few more lines out here into portions of the Gulf of Mexico and the Western Caribbean. So, I mean, we do have a stalled out frontal boundary, or frontal boundary that will stall out at that point. And we will have, the propagation of tropical waves and just the generalized area of the intertropical convergence zone and all of the moisture associated with it, and it being compressed down a little bit with the frontal boundary off to its north. So could we see a low pressure area develop? Yeah, it's possible. I wouldn't be surprised to see. I'm not saying that it's going to be tropical in nature. Could be just a big broad area of rotation that is associated with the entire gyre itself, and it never really gets an opportunity to get itself together. And I'll show you guys here a little bit more in a second. First, we're going to run our Google DeepMind, and we are out 5 days. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We've got one little blip. As you can see here, maybe a couple more blips when we get to day 7. Here we are, day 7. Not much at all. We're going to run it out to day 10. And as you can see, once we get it to day 10, one little signal over here in the Gulf. The main development region is firing off, but again, not a lot anywhere else. And even if I run it into what is considered fairy tale land, no real big signals jump out at me here tonight. One thing that I do want to note is for Kiko, man, these tracks have been continuously shifting off to the north and to the east. This is becoming an optimistic sign for our friends out here in Hawaii. It could stay just far enough north to where it's not going to impact anybody. But we'll come back to Kiko here momentarily because it's very impressive on the satellite view here this evening. So now we're going to jump into our models. Now we have our 850 millibar cyclonic relative vorticity models. We have our Euro on the left and our GFS on the right. This represents areas of rotation or spin approximately 1 mile above the ocean surface. As you can see, as we run this forward, get it out to about 48 hours, we really don't have much of a coherent signal at all. We do have that other area of vorticity to the south and to the west. The GFS wants to catch it, as you can see here. The Euro wants to kind of elongate this and string it out. It is not a coherent signal at all. The GFS at about 72 hours, even though we said that 48 hours ago and 24 hours ago, we've said the exact same thing at 72 hours. Um, and then if we continue to run this forward, as you can see, even the GFS, the euro, none of it. Nothing really gets its act together at all, which is an absolutely amazing to be able to report that here. But, so let me get out here and I'm going to go to day 7 because this is something that doesn't necessarily show up in the colors. So we've got winds coming up like this. We've got potential winds coming in like that. We've got winds heading in like this and winds going across like that. CAG. If I compare that with the euro, not so much. We've got winds here, kind of stagnant here, maybe a little weak wind here, some wind here like this. But then we also have it also being in response to this trough right here. We also have a little bit of motion this way. So it's not necessarily, we do not have a CAG on the euro. The GFS definitely develops the CAG and develops the CAG kind of early. CAG, for folks that may not know, CAG, CAG, is an acronym that we use for the Central American Gyre. And it is a large, broad area of low pressure that occurs over Central America. And as you could see, the difference between the euro and the GFS. The euro does not develop CAG, and if there was an area of low pressure, it sheds off into the Eastern Pacific. As to where the GFS does develop the Central American Gyre, it's very broad. We do not have tropical cyclone development at this point, and even if it did, when we look at the wind shear going out 10 days, you will see that this seed is not going to like the environment that it is in. But if this materializes, as the GFS is calling for here tonight, we'll watch the trends later on and see if that does materialize and if the euro picks up on it. But if this does, the rainfall amounts across the Florida Peninsula, you're going to get a fire hose, folks. And it's going to rain, and it's going to rain a lot. So I have here, we're going to do a quick run through this. We've got the 500 millibar on the top, the 700 millibar on the bottom, the euro on the left, and the GFS on the right. This is our relative humidity. And browns represent our dry colors, greens represent our moisture. If we continue to run this forward and we get it out, we can see that 72 hours, we've got our wave, but the euro has pretty much killed it already. Really doesn't have much on it at all. An extremely hostile, stable, and dry air mass hanging out to its north. So the moment that it tries to do anything, it gets absolutely just choked out. If we compare this now with the GFS, we do have some moisture, but again, we do know that it really doesn't materialize into much. But the reason that I want to run this all the way out is the differences when we get to 10 days, especially when it comes to the 500 millibar level. You look here, and in parts of the majority of the Caribbean is engulfed in dry air. You've got all of your mid-level moisture has shed and left the region and has exited off the frame stage left. Well, if we look at the GFS, it is a huge difference. Look at this. This is straight moisture. And it is in both the 500 and the 700 millibar level with a trough that would, honest to God, folks, when I said fire hose, That's exactly what I meant. It would be a fire hose of moisture. Very, very humid, very sticky, a lot of dew points. Rain, 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 especially for the folks there on the East Coast. So, just trying to, decipher the data as to what we see here tonight. Come back tomorrow night and things are most likely going to change, but we update these things on a nightly basis. If we compare that with our wind shear, now knowing that we have Invest 91L out there still ends up being that belt of shear to the north. The euro pretty much chokes it off. The GFS, on the other hand, has a belt of shear that is showing up on this model that is about halfway up the chain of the islands, right about here. Everything to the north of that is having winds coming from the west blowing to the east, and there's not a lot of activity going on here south of that. So it would be just south of Barbados. If that's what the GFS is calling for. The euro, on the other hand, has some area like this, but it's not really too overly bearing. It's not much at all. Really wouldn't be much of an impact to anything. Now, as we continue to run this forward, we are going to get it out to day 7. And if you notice at day 7, now we saw that our waves potential development area is kind of in this region right now from the National Hurricane Center, kind of goes here. We've got a great amount of shear that is denoted by the GFS, pretty much nothing with the euro, but the dry air is going to choke it off. One thing that they do agree on is this shear component here across the western and central portions of the Caribbean. Now, we're going to run this forward and see, because we know that the GFS wants to develop a Central American gyre by day 7 and then potentially try to get something going. Well, take a look, folks. We're out 240 hours, and I really want to show this because if something were to try to pull northward, you look at this belt of shear. All right, that's going to be very, very hostile conditions for anything that tries to get through there. And if you look at the euro, because CAG does not establish, it creates a belt of wind shear that goes all the way across. Our only conducive environment would be in this region here and way, way south down here into the tropical region. That would be, if the euro verifies in 10 days, this is really going to be our only conducive environment for tropical cyclone organization or development. Everything else could potentially be hostile conditions. So I'm just reporting what the data is showing tonight, folks. Now, our rain. We've got our NOAA blended models on the left and our WPC official forecast on the right with the 18Z from the WPC. We're out 7 days. Now, remember what I said with CAG and the potential for our stalled out frontal boundary. We may compress some things down there. And take a look what happens when we get, this is the end of the WPC. As you could see, quite a bit of rainfall, especially potentially even into the Bahamas as well. But look what happens when I start to run this forward on the model blend. We're getting more and more and more, and I'm really starting to get concerned for the folks here along the eastern seaboard of the Florida Peninsula, because as we get our moisture, let's go back to a blank screen-ish so people can see. As we get our moisture streaming up from the south and then coming across the state like so, as the heating of the day develops, you're going to get rising air over the Florida Peninsula that creates the sea breeze coming from the Atlantic and from the Gulf. Well, the general flow is already from the Gulf. So when that sea breeze activates in the afternoon for the East Coast, we're talking about big time shower and thunderstorm activity. Maybe not anything severe, but you're going to have some saturated soils. And if that CAG does develop like we seen with the GFS, you're going to get a fire hose of moisture. Would not be surprised if you get an inch a day, average out at least an inch a day, if not more, over the course of a week. It's going to be very wet and miserable in the sense of all of the moisture, but it may help to keep the temperatures down because of all the increased cloud cover and rainfall as well. All right, taking a quick look tonight at our Madden-Julian oscillation. It's still inside the circle, is forecast to both of the GFS and GEFS intensify it and amplify it out here into portions of phase 2, and then drop it back and may have it on a quick rebound and a quick return to where we don't get it out here to 3, 4, and 5 very much. It just dives back, collapses back in the circle, and then redevelops back over into our neck of the woods. I hope that doesn't happen, but it's a couple weeks out, so we'll continue to watch it. A quick look at Earth Null tonight. As you can see, we do have multiple areas of vorticity located along the intertropical convergence zone here. That is Invest 91L. And then we've got that other blob that we've seen there on the vorticity maps with the 850 millibar cyclonic vorticity. So all in all, though, I'm not really going to go through it too much with Earth Null. As you can see, there is this area of high pressure off to its left. It did not get the opportunity to get underneath that and to get some lower shear values. And as we continue to run this forward, some of that pattern changes and we get the upper level low here that could induce a little bit of some shearing conditions if it gets too far to the north. So that's about all that I have for the Atlantic Basin. If you guys have any questions about the Atlantic, please let me know. We're taking a quick look at our Global Tropics Hazards Outlook. This comes out every Tuesday. This is for week 2 on the top, week 3 on the bottom. We use this as a reference graphic, and it just reminds us to give Mother Nature the respect. Give hurricane season the respect. We may not have nothing right now, but it don't take much to flip the switch when we're talking about the legitimate climatological peak of hurricane season. So just stay weather aware, folks. That's all I ask. Monitor your local National Weather Service office or your official meteorological agency. That is legitimately all I ask. Don't panic. Don't get worried. Don't get nervous right now. Just understand that, hey, right now we've got a 40-70 out there and that it has been reducing in development percentages today. Does that hold? We hope so. We don't want anybody impacted by a significant tropical cyclone, although we do understand that some folks also still need the rain from some of these tropical systems, and it doesn't have to be developed. So that's what we're really hoping on right now, is that we get some beneficial rains moving through the islands. Nothing flooding, nothing significant, nothing too overly impactful, no closed, no name system. Just let us go on in peace. It's been a nice year so far, so let's continue this pattern. Mother Nature's been working with this so far this year. Let's hey, shout out to Mother Nature for being, working with us for once. We appreciate it. We would love to continue to work with you through the upcoming hurricane seasons, but we know how it goes. You giveth and taketh away. Taking a look at we still got the climatological peak, folks. We're right here. We're right on it. So September 10th is the actual, like top date. And we'll talk about that then, and we'll be on the backside of the peak on the 11th. So, all in all, hey, fingers crossed, folks, fingers crossed. Okay, jumping out to the Eastern Pacific. Lorena's dead, gone. Naked swirl off the coast, never made landfall. Kiko, on the other hand, is being a little bit of a pain in the backside. As you can see here on the extreme left-hand side of the screen, we have Hurricane Kiko. And as of today, we now have a new disturbance number 1, an area of highlighted interest out here into the Eastern Pacific. Currently has a 0% chance of development over the next 48 hours and a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days. If we take a look at Kiko, absolutely gorgeous. If you find online, if you find some of these floater views of it getting in real close to the center of circulation and in the eye, it is amazing just to watch the little eddies and mesovortices kind of rotate in and around in the eye. I could get lost in it all day long, but I digress. I'm a weather geek. If we turn this over to our infrared, though, it kind of highlights just a little bit of a different story. You notice we do have a wide area of convective activity and a central dense overcast. If we kind of it's going to be very difficult for dry air to be able to intrude into the core of the storm while it has this particular shape. If it were to become fully annular in its structure to where we don't have a lot of banding features here rotating around, that doesn't really allow for dry air to get a channel in between the bands to rotate inward. So, that being said, if this maintains a more annular structure, this could be a little bit stronger than what the forecast is calling for. And I've said this for days now, the National Hurricane Center also denotes this in the discussion, which is the next frame here. Currently, Hurricane Kiko is located at 14.5 degrees north, 137.8 degrees west, approximately 1,195 miles east-southeast of Hilo, Hawaii, and about 1,400 miles east-southeast of Honolulu. Maximum sustained winds are back to a Category 4, 130 miles an hour from being down at a Category 3 earlier. Present movement is west-northwest at 10 miles an hour and a minimum central pressure of 951 millibars. There are currently no coastal watches or warnings in effect, but interest in the Hawaiian Islands should monitor the progress of Kiko. Right now, we do have hazards affecting land. We have key messages for the Hawaiian Islands, and we have the potential for rip currents and surf issues. If we look at our forecast cone has been shifting further and further away from the islands off to the north. We still have portions of the Hawaiian Islands within the cone on the very southern side, but the big island is no longer inside the cone of uncertainty. The one thing that concerns me here is if the storm maintains an annular structure for longer than normal and it were to be a little bit stronger than what is forecast and get a little bit closer, when you get the winds of a tropical cyclone away from the surface of the earth, those winds have less drag and less friction to deal with, and those increase in speed and velocity. So I am concerned about our elevated communities and peaks where Kiko is concerned right now, if we were to maintain an annular structure longer than what is called for. Okay, now we're taking this one pretty seriously. The first paragraph of the forecaster's discussion mentions and discusses our or their reasoning for their intensity at that particular advisory. The second one is calling about its track. I'm more worried about its intensity. So this is going to be key to its track. If it is a little bit more intense, it is going to want to turn a little bit more northward. If it is a little bit weaker, it's going to want to turn a little bit more westward. So if it holds and maintains its annular structure, it should in a hypothetical or in a hypothesis on this is it should keep it out away from the islands. It then degrades some, it turns it up to the north, degrades, and then it increases the amount of time that it has over open waters to dissipate or to weaken some prior to potentially reaching the islands, if it even gets there at all. So paragraph number 3. The hurricane will remain over warm waters of 27 to 28 degrees Celsius for the next 12 hours while influenced by light northeasterly vertical wind shear. Embedded in a drier than normal mid-level environment, these environmental factors should keep Kiko a smaller than average size storm as the dry air prevents a more prominent outer rain bands from forming. Conditions still appear favorable for additional intensification, so the latest intensity, and given the current improving structure, more intensification is shown than before, well above all of the available guidance. This forecast also fits with the possibility for Kiko developing annular structure, which could keep it stronger than the forecast intensity guidance. Therefore, Kiko will move over cooler waters and even drier mid-level environment. After 48 hours, west-southwesterly vertical wind shear increases steadily, exceeding 30 knots by Wednesday. This shear may help import the nearby environmental dry air into Kiko's small core. Thus, rapid weakening of the tropical cyclone is forecast as Kiko passes to the northeast of the Hawaiian Islands by the end of the forecast. After the initial bump in short-term intensity, this forecast trends back to the middle of the consensus envelope early next week, and then trends lower by the end of the forecast period. So everything's going to have to deal with whether we get an annular structure on this or not. It could maintain it for a little bit longer, which then means the rapid weakening process is delayed by just a little bit longer, and that could lead to potential indirect impacts, especially for our folks in our elevated terrain. Right now, they are calling for this to get back to 145 miles an hour, and by tomorrow night, we're still looking at 140. So, what happened? No, Christy, I look, I could see the comments going off. I just haven't looked at it. I'm kind of in that download mode at the moment, trying to take in all the data that I did earlier and then convey it back out to folks. But I see that chat going crazy, and I haven't read it yet. So I'm just trying to make sure that we keep it nice and professional here, because there are some folks out there that are still worried and concerned about this. It may not be threats for us, but I have to keep in mind for those who they are potentially under threat, and keep it. They deserve the same amount of concern and respect that we all get. So I just try to make sure. But I'm sure I'll catch the silliness here momentarily. Our diagnostic comparison with our multimedia or with our multi-models. As you can see, we are forecasting the intensity to come down, the deep layer wind shear for Kiko to come up, the sea surface temperatures to come down, and then if it survives, they will go back up. But keep in mind, it's going to be dealing with a whole bunch of shear, and the mid-level relative humidity is forecast to go down. Our forecast track, as you can see here, we've got our islands well away from this. Remember, this was supposed to go south of the islands not too long ago. Then it was forecast to be pretty much right next to the islands. Then it was forecast to pretty much go right to the islands, and now it is forecast to go north of the islands. So trends are still, hey, keep going. Go on. Go on. I know they need rain. So I would like to see something for them, some benefit, but I don't want to see any significant impact. Okay, don't forget, check your National Weather Service office. Make sure that you are paying attention to your NWS for your local forecasts, folks. It is very, very important. Our ensembles, as you can see, a lot of them for the Euro legacy, take it well to the north and to the east, then weaken it, and then potentially drive the remnants by. If it stays and it maintains, like we did with the other one, I think, what was it, Juliet? If it maintains, there's some warmer waters and potentially a better environment later down the road, but it's going to be very difficult for it to do it. It's gotta walk a very, very fine line, and as you can see, not many of the models really want to agree with it. But if it does stay strong, it'll stay well away from the Hawaiian Islands. Should. And if we take a look at the Euro AI, as you can see, bringing it up, getting it into those cooler waters, dry air intrusion through the mid-level reduction in mid-level humidity, and weakening takes place. Compare that with the GEFS. If it weakens, it then travels to the west. If it doesn't, it still continues on a more northwest track. So, hopefully, like I said, for the folks out here in the Hawaiian Islands, hopefully we don't have any significant impacts. It stays just well enough offshore to keep the major stuff away from the islands, but is still close enough to provide them with some well-needed rain. All right, last but not least, we're going to jump out here to the Western Pacific, and our tropical storm that has been traveling along the southern coast of Japan has resulted in some significant flooding for these folks along the Pacific coast in Japan, and I know Kyoto, Tokyo. There was a lot of water that I seen earlier today in some videos. So they're definitely dealing with an issue. Invest 97W. We will be keeping an eye on this and reporting back on it as we get out a little bit into tomorrow. And the final warning for our tropical storm has been issued, as it is no longer a threat to land out here. This was the final warning graphic, and as you can see, it is now well away from the Japanese mainland. So, all right, everybody, that's about all that I have here for tonight. I am going to check real quick. Due to the fact that we had our development percentage reductions. Yeah, no. Our post live discussions can get a little crazy. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. All right, everybody. We will be back live again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central here on Facebook and YouTube. So until then, have a wonderful night, everybody, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. Good night.